Welcome to Epoch News. I'm Tatiana Darzi. In China, it's emerged that the Wuhan Institute of Virology secretly deleted photos and references in April. Some people believe that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is trying to destroy evidence that could possibly incriminate them in the spread of the pandemic.
As the public started to focus on whether the Wuhan Institute of Virology leaked the CCP virus, the Institute's official website secretly deleted some references and photos in April. Commentators believe that the Chinese Communist Party wants to shift the blame by eliminating evidence. On May 3rd, the British Daily Mail reported on photos showing Wuhan scientists handling bats without any safety precautions at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Wuhan P4 laboratory. The evidence has been systematically deleted from its official website. These photos show that during a series of processes in catching, sampling, and then dissecting and analyzing bats in the laboratory, Wuhan scientists wore minimal protective equipment while handling the deadly bats. The report pointed out that the Wuhan virus laboratory is trying to cover up something. Scientists around the world now suspect that the virus leakage was caused by improper handling of deadly bat samples by the Wuhan lab. However, the photos showing how staff there handled the bats disappeared, raising alarm. Li Jianping, Master of International Law from China University of Political Science and Law, said,
"These photos were everywhere before. Now they're quietly taking these photos down. Then there is only one explanation. They are afraid of being found out. If you pull all the photos together, you'll be able to see a picture of the entire Wuhan P4 laboratory. The lab can't escape responsibility for this matter."
In addition, it appears to have also removed all references to visit in March 2018 by Rick Switzer, a science and technology expert from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. It is reported that after visiting the Wuhan virus laboratory, Switzer warned the U.S. Department of State about the risks of experiments on bats. The diplomats mentioned that the lab seriously lacked properly trained technicians and investigators. Dr. Xiao En, a former virology researcher at the U.S. Army Research Institute, said,
"They, the CCP, know that this is a loophole. That's why they delete those pictures to avoid being further investigated. They also removed the photos of a U.S. science and technology expert, Rick Switzer's visit to the lab. This will only remind people of the warning that Switzer brought up after visiting the lab."
Although the Wuhan Institute of Virology admits that the experiment is risky, it is written on the website. The laboratory's research object is highly pathogenic microorganisms. Once the test tube for storing viruses is opened in the laboratory, it is like opening a Pandora's box. UK Mail on Sunday reported that a shocking picture from the Wuhan lab in April shows that the seal on the door of a refrigerator storing 1,500 different virus strands was broken. This means that there may have been a problem of virus leakage from that refrigerator. Dr. Xiao En also pointed out that in order to prevent the public from questioning the safety of the Wuhan virus laboratory, the CCP deleted all the relevant information internally and tried to shrink responsibilities externally. Xiao En said,
"In general, what the CCP fears the most is that the world conducts investigations into CCP's cover-up of the outbreak and whether COVID-19 virus was leaked from the Wuhan lab. That's why they're actively blaming others, the US, France, or Italy, you name it."
Xiao En believes that if the CCP wants to eliminate the evidence and blame others to achieve the goal of not being held accountable, it is their wishful thinking. Because of the pandemic, most of the affected countries began to awaken and reflect upon their past relationships with the CCP. Xiao En said,
"So now people realize that it's a mistake to cooperate with the CCP on the aspect of public health. Even further cooperating with the CCP is a mistake. They see the entire country get hurt during the pandemic caused by the CCP's cover-up. They feel that the CCP must be held accountable and pay for all the losses."
The Australian Daily Telegraph reported on May 4th that a 15-page research document obtained by the Saturday Telegraph pointed out that the CCP silenced doctors who spoke out and destroyed evidence of the Wuhan lab after the virus outbreak at the end of last year. British Defense Minister Ben Wallace said on May 4th that the CCP still needs to clarify questions about the origins of the worldwide crisis caused by the spread of the CCP virus. At a press briefing held at the White House on April 30th, President Trump said that he had a high degree of confidence that the coronavirus outbreak originated from a laboratory in China, but he could not disclose any details at that time. The CCP's propaganda mouthpieces have always been denying that the CCP virus is from China. However, more and more countries have started to question the origins of the CCP virus and shifted their focus on the Wuhan P4 laboratory.
France helped China build the Wuhan Institute of Virology, modeled on the P4 laboratory in Lyon, France. The virus has spread around the world, but France is among the top 10 countries with the highest death tolls from the pandemic.
France is among the top 10 countries with the highest death tolls from the CCP virus as the pandemic spreads across the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump previously announced his intention to thoroughly investigate whether the virus was leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a P4 laboratory that is now the subject of investigation as a potential source of the outbreak. This P4 laboratory was built with the help of France. As of May 5th, confirmed cases of the CCP virus had surpassed 170,000 in France, with more than 25,000 deaths, giving a potential mortality rate of 14.9%. The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, gave a televised speech emphasizing that France was in the midst of a war with an invisible virus. Many high-ranking French government officials have tested positive for the virus, including the Minister of Culture, a Secretary of State, members of Parliament, and mayors. In March, Patrick de Vedien, a member of the Parliament, died just 3 days after announcing that he had tested positive for the CCP virus. He was the first high-ranking French government official to die from the virus. The Epoch Times special edition on the CCP virus points out that the way the virus spreads indicates it has a goal and a purpose: to seek out the CCP in order to eliminate it and the factors associated with it. We have seen the virus spread vastly in countries and cities that have close ties with the CCP. It has also infected individuals who support pro-CCP activists. Although the France-China diplomatic relationship has been rocky over the past 50 years, both countries still interact on many levels. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, a P4 laboratory, was constructed with extensive assistance from France. Antoine Isambard, a French journalist, published a book called France-China: Dangerous Liaisons, disclosing that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which France helped China build, is a replica of the P4 laboratory in Lyon, France. The article written by Antoine Isambard is published on the website Challenges. It was during the first half of 2003 that the powerful Chinese Academy of Sciences announced in Paris that it wished to acquire a Class 4 pathogen, P4 laboratory, which can host the most dangerous viruses on the planet: Ebola, coronavirus, H5N1. It is used to track down infectious strains in the hope of fighting them and thus protecting tens of thousands of people around the world. France, which inaugurated in 1999 in Lyon the P4 Jean Mérieux, the largest in Europe, is one of the most advanced countries on the subject. The request from Beijing, however, received a mixed reception within the French state. Alerted by its intelligence services, the government wonders if the technology requested by Beijing will not be diverted to develop bacteriological weapons. These fears are supported by very strong suspicions around the existence of a Chinese offensive biological program. With the support of then Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin, former President Jacques Chirac signed the political agreement during a visit to China in 2004. Jacques Chirac is a pro-CCP government official who once called on the EU to lift its ban on the shipments of Chinese weapons. Independent scholar Ge Bidong, who is based in the United States, expressed,
Former Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve once emphasized that he was going to give China 1 million euros to help them and gave them the most advanced technology of Europe. They gave a demon the best and most advanced technology to endanger the whole world. You see now that France has been hit hard by the virus because it assisted the CCP when the CCP was preparing to hurt the world by giving the best technology. Now the demon has come for you, France.
This cooperation was controversial right from the start. The French Directorate General for External Security indicated that the P4 laboratory project in Wuhan was originally undertaken by an architectural design firm in Lyon, but in 2005 the CCP chose a local design firm, the China IPPR International Engineering Corporation Limited IPPR in Wuhan to be responsible for the project. This local designing firm has close ties with subordinate branches of the CCP's military, which are under the surveillance of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. More French government officials revealed to the media that the CCP had broken its promises many times in its cooperation efforts over the last decade. For instance, the CCP promised to build only one lab in Wuhan, but broke the promise by constructing many more labs, some of which are highly suspicious. Although the Wuhan P4 lab was created with the help of France and was given the best technology by the French government, ultimately it was the CCP who had the total control over the P4 lab. According to the report published by Radio France, 15 very specialized small and medium enterprises in France gave support to establish the Wuhan P4 lab, but they were eventually marginalized. The 50 French researchers who had planned to work in Wuhan's P4 lab for 5 years never went there. Le Figaro, a French daily morning newspaper, described the situation as out of control. Since there are only Chinese researchers in the Wuhan lab, this defeated the original purpose of the contract, which was for the two nations to work together to fight infectious diseases. Alain Mérieux, a French businessman, renounced in 2015 the position of chairman of the joint committee that oversees the project and said that the Wuhan P4 lab has become a Chinese tool. Since France was still having other negotiations with the CCP at the time, it accepted the breach of the contract. France feared that stopping the Wuhan P4 lab program would bring economic retaliation from the Chinese Communist Party. Moreover, the work occurring at other P3 laboratories, also funded by the French Raffarin government, became unclear after the first SARS epidemic, as the CCP refused to clarify the real purposes of the labs. It made people worried that the CCP would also use the P4 lab without disclosing its purpose. Radio France Internationale, France's public broadcaster, pointed out that high-ranking government officials who participated in the Wuhan P4 lab project, such as China's so-called good friend, former Prime Minister Raffarin, and former Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve, who attended the inauguration of the Wuhan lab, have yet to publicly express their opinion about claims that the CCP virus came from the lab.
China's authoritarian regime is telling its citizens how to think, feel, and what sort of collective perspective they should have. Positive energy, a catchphrase since 2012, is often used to criticize dissidents for spreading negative energy and failing to have a positive outlook.
Positive energy became a catchphrase in China in 2012 and has since appeared frequently in China's state propaganda. Dissidents in China are often criticized for spreading negative energy and failing to look at the positive side of society. During the CCP virus pandemic, positive energy propaganda has been taken to an extreme. For instance, when Fangfang, a female writer and resident of Wuhan, published her diary online during the citywide lockdown, many internet trolls attacked her for recording the tragedies of Wuhan citizens. They even challenged her, saying, "Did you see those deaths with your own eyes? How dare you to write hearsay as true stories?" Ms. Zhang Zhan, a dissident and former attorney living in Shanghai, has been trying to investigate and report on the real situation in Wuhan as a citizen journalist. The following is a conversation between Zhang and a Wuhan resident who ridiculed the CCP's positive energy propaganda.
Let me tell you, according to the current policy in our country, we should not try to distinguish real from false. There's only a distinction between positive and negative energy, right? You should know this. You cannot mention deaths. If you do, it will be negative energy. So it's a forbidden topic. You cannot tell the truth because it's considered negative energy. False information is positive energy.
You cannot mention deaths. To cry, to mourn, to burn paper money for the dead, all forbidden.
That's all regarded as negative energy, so stop talking such nonsense. I can only say that not a single person died in Wuhan. The CCP virus never happened because I did not witness any cases. Just like Fang Fang, all my information about the outbreak is what I have heard, not what I have seen, so it does not count. So I don't believe in even one death because the authorities tell us only what we see with our own eyes is valid.
In my case, I visited the crematorium to check the cremators. I went there twice the other day, at noon and midnight.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Which crematorium is it?
Wuchang Funeral Home.
The garment industry in Guangzhou, China has been suffering due to the CCP virus pandemic. It has lost a large number of customers, and factory owners are now struggling to pay the rent.
Guangzhou, in China's southern Guangdong province, is known for its numerous fashion wholesale manufacturing markets. Until recently, more than 100,000 workers from Hubei province have been employed in garment factories or fashion shops in Guangzhou's Haizu district. However, due to the CCP virus pandemic, the garment industry has lost a large number of customers. Both factory and shop owners are struggling to pay their rent. On April 21st and 22nd, business owners in the Haizu district held protests in the street to demand rent reductions, only to be met with arrests and suppression by police. The Chinese-language Epoch Times was able to talk with 2 garment factory owners and a landlord in the fashion market on April 30th. Mr. Pan is the owner of a garment factory in Kangle village of Haizu district.
Roughly, how much is your monthly rent?
About 10,000 yuan, $1,416.
How big is the place?
We live next to our garment workshop. Combining the workshop and our dorm is around 1,100 square feet. The rent is expensive. Everything in Guangzhou is expensive.
Do you mean there are no orders at all?
Right.
I heard that there are people going back to Hubei every day.
Yes, it's happening every day.
Do you have any specific plans?
Not yet. It depends. Presently, I don't have any income, but I still have to pay rent.
How are you going to make a living for the time being if there is no income?
What can I do? I am spending my savings.
Did you hear any updates about the outcome of the protests?
No updates so far.
When did it take place? How many people participated?
Around 1,000 people.
Is your family in Hubei worried about your safety?
Of course. There were new infections in the past 2 days. One of them is from Hubei.
You have been in this business for more than 10 years. Do you think you might be able to change jobs?
No, it will be too difficult. People like me are only good at this profession.
Mr. Zhuo is a garment factory owner at Kangle village.
I heard that many people from Hubei have chosen to return home to Hubei.
That's true.
Are you having a very tough time in business this year?
Very tough indeed.
Are most of the factories still closed?
Yes.
Have any landlords agreed to reduce or waive rents? How many months?
The landlord agreed to waive 1 month's rent.
1 month? Didn't you ask him to waive several months?
Just 1 month. In some places, waiving even 1 month was rejected.
Have any Hubei natives purchased homes in Guangzhou? Does any business owner own their own workshop?
Who could afford it? Real estate here is very expensive.
Is your main business export or domestic?
There has been no export at all this year.
Then you have to rely on domestic consumers. How is the situation with the domestic market?
Very bad.
Does the government have any relief programs, such as financial aid or subsidies?
We expect the government to help us reduce the rent, but there is not much reduction so far.
So what do you most need assistance with for the time being?
To have the landlords reduce the rents, we may be able to survive if the rents are reduced.
Mr. Xia is a landlord who owns rental properties in Ruibao village.
I heard that many people from Hubei are now returning home.
I believe so. They don't have any jobs here, but they have expenses to pay.
How are your rentals doing? Are they all occupied?
In my dreams, how can they be all occupied? I'll be satisfied if the rents I collect cover my costs and utilities.
How many rooms do you own? How many tenants do you usually have?
30 rooms.
How many people are renting now?
About a dozen. They can hardly pay rent and utilities. These business people are suffering huge losses, but they still have to pay wages. It's a very tough time.
Yesterday, President Trump met with Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Governor Abbott gave thanks to President Trump, Vice President Pence, and the team working to help Texas during the pandemic. Now, Texas is going through the process of opening up while reducing the spread of the CCP virus by taking the proper precautions.
Listen, thank you so much for what you've done. As you know, you and I have had the chance to talk a whole lot on the phone during the course of this pandemic, but the staff that you provided, the Vice President I spoke with this past week in a response, Dr. Burks I speak to frequently getting her advice, and the team that you provided to us, the resources that you provided to us, helped us respond very robustly. Talk about the economy. Before this pandemic occurred, Texas was the leading nation for creating jobs. Texas was the leading nation for gross domestic product growth. And so we were the economic powerhouse of the United States, and we are ready to get there again. So we're going about the process of slowly opening back up, doing the right strategies to make sure we can open up while at the same time reduce the spread. I want to thank the people of Texas. It's the people of Texas who've done a great job of slowing the spread, washing your hands, wearing masks, practicing distancing practices to make sure we reduce the spread. Because of that, we are announcing more and more businesses that are opening up gradually to make sure we don't expand the spread, but we're doing so in a way that will make sure Texas will once again reclaim its position as being the #1 economy in the United States.
In one family in New York City, some members tested positive while others tested negative, yet they all became sick around the same time. After several weeks and additional tests, they were all confirmed to have contracted the CCP virus. This left the family with more questions than answers.
So it started off...
After a week or so sick in bed in their New York City apartment in March, the Johnson-Baruch family were convinced they had been stricken by the novel coronavirus. Subsequent tests, however, left them with more questions than answers. Marie Johnson-Baruch, an actress who was starring in Broadway's The Phantom of the Opera before all New York City theaters shut, was first to fall ill. One by one, her husband Jason and 2 teenage daughters also felt sick with symptoms that mirrored those of COVID-19. They called New York State's Department of Health coronavirus hotline to see if they could get tested, but were advised to recuperate at home unless they got very ill. By April, when they finally felt better, they found a location where they could get tested for the antibodies the immune system produces to fight the virus, hoping it would tell them if they had indeed suffered from COVID-19.
Now, the strange thing was I tested positive and Jason tested negative to that antibody test.
So my test showed no presence of any antibodies to COVID-19.
Later that month, about 6 weeks after they first called the state's coronavirus hotline, and a good month after their symptoms had passed, they got a call back saying they could be tested for the virus itself. Once again, the results surprised them. Johnson-Baruch, her husband, and their younger daughter all tested positive for the virus, but their older daughter tested negative for COVID-19. After all the testing, the family felt frustrated by several lingering questions. Were they still in some sense sick? Could they still infect others?
The reality is it's been very hard getting definitive answers from anyone, and no one's really willing to put themselves on the line and say, hey, you're home free, you have antibodies, or you're still contagious. No one really wants to tell us definitively anything.
Dr. Danielle Umpad is an epidemiologist at New York University School of Global Public Health.
When you're getting equivocal answers or perhaps unsatisfying answers from your physicians, it's not because they're trying to be difficult or they personally don't know. It's because science does not know whether or not antibodies means that you're immune.
While tests for the virus and the antibodies are becoming more widely available, they are not perfect. They can come back with false positives, false negatives, or ambiguous results that can confound people.
If I was a person who had control over opening up an economy and undoing the stay-at-home orders, I would be very careful right now about whether or not I let those antibody prevalence estimates determine whether or not we open up.
The Johnson-Baruch family are not quite done with testing. The daughter who had a negative virus result has since tested positive for antibodies for the virus. Jason Baruch is also seeking a second antibody test. A positive test would offer some comfort that he may have some level of immunity, or at least that's what he hopes.
Coming up next are some business news briefs for this week.
Over 3 million people claimed for unemployment benefits last week, but the rate seems to be slowing. It's around 700,000 less than the week before. It brings the total during the past 7 weeks to over 33 million, a record figure. The 133-year-old luxury retailer Neiman Marcus filed for bankruptcy on Thursday. It's one of the highest profile collapses yet among retailers. It furloughed much of its 14,000 workers in March. Retailer J. Crew also filed for bankruptcy on Monday. Lowe's will deliver $1 million worth of flowers to senior homes this Mother's Day. The flowers are from small business growers that may have experienced slow business amid the outbreak. Uber will help deliver the flowers to more than 500 long-term care and senior living facilities. The Bank of England said Britain could be headed for its biggest economic slump in over 300 years. The economy may shrink by 25% between March and June, with unemployment doubling to 9% of the workforce.
On Friday, Katherine Jenkins sang at the Royal Albert Hall for the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, marking the end of World War II.
The concert is very much a tribute to the wonderful music of World War II, so things like the White Cliffs of Dover, A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, and of course we have to do We'll Meet Again, and that would be a special virtual duet with Dame Vera Lynn.
The concert hopes to unite a global online audience and boost morale during the pandemic. International Mezzo Soprano Jenkins called the event a tribute to the wonderful music of World War II, performing wartime classics The White Cliffs of Dover, A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, and We'll Meet Again. We'll Meet Again was sung as a virtual duet of Jenkins with Forces sweetheart Dame Vera Lynn, who entertained British troops during World War II with songs that captured a longing for home and peace.
It's totally surreal to be here at the Royal Albert Hall without any audience. I've done many concerts here, and so I've sound-checked to an empty room, but never this empty. It just feels absolutely magnificent to see it like this, and I feel very honoured that they've allowed me to do this.
On May 7th, Jenkins said in an interview that even though she had sound-checked the empty auditorium in the past, it did feel surreal to sing without an audience, but she also felt very honored to have the opportunity to perform at the Royal Albert Hall.
Things have been very different here today with the coronavirus restrictions. Everybody's observing the social distancing. And nevertheless, I have to say that the team have really had an amazing spirit of doing the best that they can to get this show together so that we can celebrate the 75th anniversary of VE Day in style.
This is the first time in 150 years of history of London's landmark that the historic venue hosted a performance behind closed doors.
I may be right, I may be wrong, but I'm perfectly willing to swear that when you turned and smiled at me, a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square.
The following charts will show you the most recent numbers regarding the CCP virus pandemic. However, China and Iran are not included because their numbers are unverifiable. We've been mentioning the many losses in the world caused by the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the CCP virus. With over 3.5 million people infected, China is still defensive about independent international inquiry into the origin and spread of the CCP virus. The Epoch Times has initiated a global Sign the Petition campaign calling for investigating, condemning, and rejecting the CCP. We believe that investigating and exposing the truth is the only way that we can remain safe. Let's take action. Sign the petition at ccpvirustruth.com. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this program with friends and family to keep them informed about the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.